Roadmap will be the case in order and the two off. For anybody who's not ready. Okay, let's begin. Let's start with inherency. Look at the first piece of evidence we read, which is our AITRC in 2016 evidence. It shows you that China has a massive agricultural need and the United States should open up economic trade policies within this sector. Once you realize there's a problem in the status quo, which the negative hasn't argued against at all, then you have to look to the affirmative vote because we offer the only possible solution to this problem. Next, move on to solvency. I have three responses here. First, pull across our evidence. The negative doesn't give you any reason to reject our warrants. All they do is read you their own evidence without denying what we read. R. Keller in 2016 is well warranted. What this evidence says is that China is restructuring their agricultural needs with domestic consumption only to looking towards importing. The U.S. should fulfill this need, and the affirmative plan provides that opportunity. Second, look at their evidence. It tells you from 2015 that China wants to become export-led. However, it's not specific to agriculture, which our evidence is, and our evidence is from now. You have to go with our newer evidence here because it's discussing current policy. The negatives argument is simply outdated. And third, China's Xi wants investment treaty talks with U.S. accelerated. Harari in 16. Xi Jinping promised that Beijing would work as hard as it would to wrap its talks in BIT with the U.S. in order to help the world economy. Xi said that there is no reason to fear differences between the two countries. This evidence plus all the evidence that we read all says one thing. Xi Jinping, the president of China, wants the BIT to go through specifically with agriculture because they know it's needed in order to feed their people. Once you know the president of China is wanting it, you know that China will take this deal and therefore we have solvency. Now move on to the economy advantage. I have four responses. First, the negative did not directly attack our evidence. Again, the ACC in 2015 evidence tells you that there are billions worth of possible dollars in the ag sector to China. Right now, China is perceived not to be playing nice economically with others, and our plan allows this engagement to take place, which becomes a win-win-win scenario for all involved. The win-win-win is a win for the Chinese economy because they will instantly boost agricultural production, which feeds their people and generates their economy. It's a win for the U.S. economy because it opens up a trade sector that we previously didn't utilize. And it's a win for the world because food prices will be lower and less costly for those countries who can't spend as much as China on food. Food prices are high now because China consumes so much of it. My third response is that the only evidence they read says that manufacturing is the key to the Chinese economy. Cool, but that doesn't deny our advantage. We can still grow the Chinese economy and U.S. economies post-plan through agriculture. This argument doesn't mitigate the impacts of our advantage in any way. And my fourth response is that boost U.S. agriculture exports to China post-plan, Schwartz at 14. The BIT would increase the global reach of American businesses, allowing them to invest in Chinese markets and industries that are largely restricted today. The treaty would allow American ag exporters to establish critical distribution platforms in China to facilitate their sales of American products into that market. This evidence is critical because what it tells you is that right now in China, ag is pretty low. We don't do that much when it comes to trading our agricultural technology. Post-plan, we will. We open up that market, which is a huge boom, and we are allowed to have all those impacts from that advantage. Next, let's move on to the resource wars advantage. I have four responses. First, the 1AC still stands strongly on this advantage from plan. Chinese people are starving in the status quo. The negative doesn't refute that. By conceding this point, we know that the only conceivable solution is an affirmative ballot. China can't sustain itself in the agricultural field. American technology and expertise is the best solution. The affirmative plan prevents a war over the scarcity of food. My second response, the solvency evidence is there. We read Goller in 2016 that says China needs outside tech and expertise to solve. We also read Deering in 15 that says all the evidence points to a need for more investments to prevent a resource war. That's what plan does. Third, the only evidence that the negative team reads that it says that a resource war is not likely. However, there are really no warrants as to why it's not likely or why it wouldn't happen. Fourth, empirics prove the impact is very real. Clare in 13. Many ancient civilizations experienced warfare when faced with resource shortages. Diamond detected a similar pattern of Mayan civilizations and Azua culture. Food was a significant factor in Japan's invasion of Manchuria and Germany's invasion of Poland and the Soviet Union. Analysts see persistence of resource conflict where materials remain scarce. Fighting in North Africa has driven by competition for scarce water supplies. What we see in this advantage is that once food is dwindling down, China is going to do what it takes in order to get their people fed. And if they can't, then millions of people are going to die. And so what we see is once there is a dwindling of resources, there will be war over it. And it's not just with China, it's in other places of the world. Because let's assume a world in which China just go ahead, they consume all the food from everybody else. We're going to see civil wars in Africa and other nations that would be low on the food totem pole. Now let's go to the China rise disadvantage. Let's start with the uniqueness first. The disadvantage is non-unique. What this means is that we have economically engaged China in the past, and we've never seen the impacts that this negative team is claiming would happen if we were to engage China today. There have been over 90 current dialogue mechanisms. Xinhua English News 15. The past few years, cooperation between the two countries has continually deepened in such fields as high-level contact, economy, and people-to-people exchanges with fruitful results achieved. Obama paid a state visit to China, and the two sides reached a historic deal on climate change. The U.S. and China are increasingly economic interdependent, and their trade volume hitting $550 billion of U.S. dollars. The S&D is among more than 90 dialogue mechanisms between China and the United States. Second, the disadvantage doesn't have a brink. Brink means how much of X must occur before we see Y. This means that the negative must provide evidence that says how much agricultural technology must occur before we see the impacts take place. Without this evidence, the disadvantage doesn't add up. Make them read evidence before you can vote on this disadvantage. The brink evidence is so important. If there has been 90 engagements in this past year and we haven't seen this disadvantage, make them prove it. Next, move to the link level. This is a generic disadvantage without any specific evidence. This disadvantage needs to go away. And second turn, economic engagement helps manage China's current rise. Morrison in 15. The key challenges for the United States are to convince China that it has a stake in maintaining the international trading system. And two, the further reforms are the surest way. Some have supported policy of engagement with China using various reforms. Others support a somewhat mixed policy of using engagement coupled with WTO procedures. Once we see that they are heavily engaged economically, we know that they will not go to war. We will not see a China rise. Next, go to the Chinese politics disadvantage. First, on uniqueness. Cross-apply the Xinhua English News from the first disadvantage response. If we've engaged 90 times with China in the last year and we haven't seen political unrest in China because of it, we know that our plan will also not cause it to happen. There's nothing in the negative evidence that tells you that our plan would cause this specifically. Without that evidence, there's nothing unique about it. But next, move on to the link. Economic and political reforms are key to Chinese economy. Reforms is necessary to maintain stability. Ximing Wang in 2016. Xi Jinping argues supply structure reform as world's second largest economy faces headwinds. Reflected by economic indicators, the reform is the key to the overall well-being of Chinese economy. The direction is to reduce ineffective supply increases and make the supply structure more fitting to the demand structure. The market and government would both play better than their balanced reforms. Supply side reform is the key to solving problems facing the economy. Focus on allowing market to play a decisive role must be pushed to add to long-term vitality of economy. China yet effectively implemented the supply side reforms agenda. That's why Xi called for strengthening of efforts to push reform. This evidence is critical, and why it turns this disadvantage is key is because we will not see political unrest if we grow the economy of China. That's what they want. As long as Xi Jinping is showing that its policy options are actually maintaining or growing the Chinese economy, there will not be any political unrest, and we can actually turn this disadvantage into an advantage. And with that, I am out of time, and I thank you.